You're listening to Creating a Universe, a Love Anarchy podcast hosted by William J. Rogers. On this show, we follow the journey of creatives, artists, and entrepreneurs who are making a name for themselves in the ever-evolving landscape of today's industry, featuring an insight into both Love Anarchy and the Labaniverse music universe, as well as the individual projects and stories of each of our guests, from the music industry and beyond. So whether you're a budding creative or simply interested in what goes on behind the scenes, this is the podcast for you. Hello and welcome to Creating a Universe. I'm your host, William J. Rogers, and today I'm here with Ben Sebastian. How are you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm brilliant. How are you? All right?
Yeah, very good, man. It's good to have you on here. So, Ben, you're a composer, metal musician yourself. Namely, you've created a lot of instrumental kind of metal music, but you also have another side to you, which is with the Sonic Symphonic Podcast, where you have this passion, of course, for promoting other, kind of upcoming artists, especially in the sort of symphonic metal kind of genre, which is awesome. Would you perhaps like to start just by giving us a little bit more of an overview of who you are and those things that you're doing?
Yeah, where do I start? Okay, so on the music side, I kind of self-taught keyboards from around about 4. Didn't get on well with other sort of musicians as I went through the sort of school path because, they were all into cheesy 90s pop and garage that was about at the time. And I wasn't. I was listening to, my dad's 70s music, sort of prog rock and things like Mike Oldfield and Jean-Michel Jarre. So I was heavily quite instrumental or bonkers focused then. And it doesn't do well. And I hadn't really sort of taken to the grunge stuff that was going in the 90s either. So I just did my own thing. And, I managed to get like cheap keyboards and things like this. And I had something called, I don't know if you guys might remember it, but Atari ST.
Nice. And
she was like an all-in-one computer box. And it actually had MIDI ports. So it was popular amongst musicians. And so I was recording on that. And then, of course, I needed a guitarist. And no one wanted to know. So I kind of picked up a battered old free steel string. The strings were probably about 11 years old. And I started learning Pink Floyd and stuff, playing along, and then progressed to being able to put backing to my stuff through no electric guitar, but I eventually progressed to. So I guess I was writing symphonic metal before I knew what symphonic metal was. Right. Or at least maybe sort of progressive symphonic metal. I really struggle with these labels now because,
sure.
which is a bit daft because I've called my podcast the Sonic Symphonic Podcast. But as you hear, it does sort of go off in its tangents and different arrays. So that's on the music side. I guess I had a bit of a kind of troubled start in life and a bit of a wobbly adolescence, and it's been wobbly all the bloody way if you ask me. But so I basically write, and we didn't have online platforms and bits and pieces, so it was a case of sort of pressing CDs at home and all that kind of stuff, and that got absolutely nowhere. But I was content just writing, and life kicks in. You get a partner, you get a job, you got to have a career, you've got to do this. So I would sort of sell all my stuff in favor of whatever it else was that life demanded of me, and then get myself into a mess, and then realize I needed it all back again, and kind of go through those cycles. I suppose in my sort of mid-30s, I took a serious downwards dive with a cocaine addiction, and my way out of that was to rebuild my studio and keep it with a promise to actually keep the instruments, not sell them in favor of the latest girlfriend or the next favorite person in my life, not sell it to solve business problems, pay the rent or whatever else I'd fallen behind with, and just be a bit more tunnel vision with it. And then that's how the Callousing albums came into fruition. They were written as part of my recovery. I suppose we can talk about that. a little bit further down the line, perhaps, how I got out of that. But yeah, that's kind of what I did. So that's me on the musical side of things.
Fantastic.
Yeah, the podcast was an idea that came after release of these albums, and well, I'll be upfront about it, after a short spell in custody. Cocaine, money go missing, money can't be replaced. When you're clean, your past catches up with you. I did the thing, I paid the price. And whilst kind of sitting in that environment where you're absent from music, instruments, even to get a CD of that's remotely anything close to what you like in a custody setting can take weeks. And it was about 8 bits of paperwork. So I had a lot of time to think about this music that I was missing. And I kind of had an idea to do something that kind of pulled everything together and kept me in the music sort of industry, because you can write stuff, and as we all know as musicians, we write a lot of stuff, we put a lot of output, and guess what, doesn't get heard anywhere. You can post on Instagram 4 times a day, you can do this, you can do that, you can follow all the latest trends, but it is really hard to capture and keep listeners. So I wanted something else to be doing in case I started composing and then I just got sort of tired with that whole process. And in addition to that, and there's many layers to this podcast idea. In addition to that, I kind of wanted to bring some of the past stories in with me. There's things that I've had done to me and that people have done to them that aren't pleasant. And you survive those, and you survive those successfully, or you survive them successfully with things attached, things like substance abuse, things like negative self-talk and crises of identity. And I took a view that I was doing all this stuff as a child, as a young adolescent, despite everything else that was going on. But that was what I was into. And then life and its expectations took me away. And then suddenly I'm getting over an addiction, and I'm learning to find myself. And I'm thinking, and I was also in an environment where there are a lot of other people involved in that process of finding themselves. And I'm like, so what if you could do something that maybe you can't entirely stop that process, but interrupts that process, or at least highlights that process. Yeah. And so if I can make a sort of a podcast thing, and I can make musicians feel heard, and I can try to make it as a reasonably good podcast, then that's got to be something worthwhile. And the more positive feedback you get about your music, the more likely you are to continue with it. Yeah. And many of us musicians will probably say that music is a part of their healing process. You're stressed off, pissed off, it's a release. The dark thoughts, dark experiences, they come out through the melodies and the compositions and the lyrics and everything down to the artwork and everything that we write and conceptualize. So I wanted to pull that into it. In addition to that, I get the added bonus that I can plug 1 or 2 of my tracks, and I can talk about what I'm doing. So I can kind of capture an audience through helping other people. And when you do that, you kind of are creating a community. Yeah. And then I suppose the next thing I want to progress with the podcast is, I've started talking about my own experiences in what I call bonus episodes. I want to start dragging more people onto that. Great, because there's a lot to talk about that isn't being talked about. It's kind of expected as a that if you make it in a rock or a metal genre, that you're going to end up partying hard and not dealing with your success particularly well, and drugs and stuff. But then nobody actually talks about the emotional side, and until they're either been sort of like retired or come back. It's a bit of a missing avenue. There's a lot of normal people or average people doing their music, following their passion, but not only is their music not being heard, but they're not being heard.
Yeah, right. I'm with you, man.
So that's kind of an overview of kind of what I'm about.
There's a hell of a lot to unpack there, really, isn't there? But yeah, we'll attempt to do that. Break it down, I suppose. I think first of all, I just want to say that I absolutely love that philosophy and that mentality that you have. I'm really all about that kind of building community, and music is really something that brings us together. I think that this kind of catharsis of, an outlet for emotions and creativity is universal within music, but, metal music and this kind of area of things, like, let's just say for the most part, you probably don't get into bands like Cannibal Corpse or whatever, because everything is cushy,
Yeah.
So
maybe there is obviously maybe a link between the darkness of life, and then that leads you towards the darkness of art.
Because then it satisfies that, right? If that's what you're ultimately looking to outlet, to have the catharsis of a creative endeavor, then it's really kind of like purging that dark energy, as it were. And so when you say about writing because you're pissed off and whatever it is, I think that naturally there's a lot of that in especially this kind of rock and metal side of things. And as you say, like, the majority of people are perfectly decent people, and as you say, don't have to become like, obnoxiously successful rock stars for it to matter. Like, as you say, we are all dealing with our own things in our day-to-day life, and just having a platform to connect with others is a beautiful thing. It is a very meaningful thing, and I'm certainly about that, and the fact that you are too is really awesome. And it's obviously a big.
It is awesome. I see what you're doing, and I commend you, for it. And
thank you, man.
It's growing very nicely, and I'm really getting into this whole sort of characterization. You've got this, the love universe and the different characters and stuff. I've started doing some sort of reading and whatever. Look, one thing, you are absolutely brilliant on your social media at replying and using more than 4 words. And I feel bad that I'm not so good at that. And I keep missing your posts. I do watch them. I've been watching your sort of cut-ups and stuff. But I am watching that with great interest, and as I say, you're building a community as well. So there's a lot of synergy between us and kind of what we're doing. So
man, I totally agree. I mean, I think that we started our podcast approximately the same kind of time.
Your first podcast came out about a month before mine, and I wasn't aware of you back then. But I saw you. I can't remember. I think I might have just messaged you randomly. Because I saw you were sort of along the same sort of like train, and I was, looking for like-minded people. I suppose as a reference point, I started the podcast in May. I think it was something like the 12th of May, the first episode. So I suppose I probably started a couple of days before that. That's just the way I am. This is my idea. Going to get it done, get it up as quick as possible. But for the viewers, I just talked about the custody setting. That was 15 and a half months inside in an open sort of prison, slightly better than the rest. But I came out on the 1st of April this year. So in addition to sort of I should be sorting out my life, which I did all very successfully. Everything from like getting a bank account and getting a job and all the tedium that comes with it. But I also got straight on the creative path. So the podcast is that young. You were about a month ahead, and I thought, oh, okay. Cool. I need to catch up.
It was really cool. Yeah.
But we've just been kind of working in tandem, and we talk often as well. So share ideas. Yeah. I don't know if you pinched any ideas off me. I don't think I'm that good, but I certainly pinched some ideas off of you in terms of the way you sort of cut things up and do the posting and stuff. Because I'm terrible at that. I'm an absolute creator, and then once I've created, that's it. I want to go and create again.
Sure,
but it's that maintenance thing of, okay, now you've got to sort of cut. And I'm learning. It is actually still creative, you know, slicing what you've done up into bits and pieces, and then finding the right terminology and all that, and where you go, and its placement and all that. And I'm learning.
Man, that's what it's all about. I mean, man, I'm exactly the same as you. Like, by default, you know, I've just been trying to train that for, you know, a few years now with the social media pages and blah blah blah. And so that's the only difference, really. And man, yeah, as you say, you basically started this trajectory like fresh, like a few months ago. You know, and I think that you've done phenomenally well, considering.
Thank you,
man. So
thank you. Yeah,
it's really cool.
I'm loving it. I got to stop upgrading the format, because at first it was audio, and then it was just, you know, sort of like audio with a sort of like a display, and then it's gone to video, and I've had it certain ways, and then I've changed the format again, and I should just like leave it alone, but I can't stop creating, and yeah, you're one of the first sources of feedback. I've got two sort of primary sources of feedback for everything that I do. You've got yourself and a gentleman, Adrian Duerdo from Phoebus the Night. There's a band that featured in my first podcast. I loved that track so much that I just messaged, and then we just got talking, and now he's kind of remixed the single that I'm putting out on the 3rd of September, and yeah, we talk about all sorts, very much like we do, you know, psychology, community, music, you know, EQing, mastering, tech, and it's great. And as someone with a diagnosed personality disorder, I've got borderline personality disorder. And the bit that this references is a completely destabilization of identity. It's great for me to be wedged into a community of like-minded individuals. So that's another stabilizing factor. And it just tells me that, you know, this is what I should have been doing all along. I don't cry over the lost time, but I'm making the time count. I keep my schedule up. I keep myself engaged, and you know, there's the fact that I'm meeting so many cool people is an added bonus, and I'm getting to hear loads and loads and loads of cool, super cool music. You know, it's just no day is a boring day. You know, it's just like people send me this, or I stumble across stuff, and I'm sort of developing an ear for you know, what sounds absolutely, you know, awesome. You know, for listeners, and then trying to sort of blend it all together. It's great. I don't really have a job, you know, it's time consuming, but I love what I'm doing. And as someone, I can't remember who said it, but someone once said, if your hobby is where you work every day, then you never work a day again in your life. And I'm very fortunate that I've got this, and very fortunate that my real job, the one that pays the bills, is cooking, which that was my first choice of career. And again, that echoes of, you know, how we start doing stuff that we enjoy, and then life takes us on these little paths of things we think we must be doing, and then we go back and find ourselves. So, you know, I'm loving life at the minute, you know. That's
great, man. That's what it's all about. And I mean, this is like a recurring theme that keeps coming up now in the podcast, last few episodes, but it's especially relevant with what you're doing, which is how inspiring it is, like all the amazing music that's out there.
Yeah,
like it's incredible, man. And I know that you're a big kind of like Bandcamp guy, right? We've spoken about this before. Like, you find bands out of nowhere, you know, like bands that, like, some of them don't even have an Instagram page, or they've got like 7 followers, some of them.
Yeah, you're speaking about Release Hallucination there, aren't you? Yeah.
There was one I remember, because
it's very Japanese.
Yeah, there was a Japanese one. But some of them I listened to first via your podcast, and I'm listening, and I'm like, wow, this sounds incredible. You know, this is like a huge mega production, and it sounds, you know, amazing. And then like, this is just like some tiny band nobody's ever heard of. They've got like, you know, maybe 200 followers or something, and so I'm going through following all of them, and it's amazing. So you're definitely a real, like, you're all about finding those diamonds in the rough, you know. And,
yeah, well, well, I probably like everyone that listens to music, but maybe a little bit more sort of elevated in my case, because sort of the I have a very thin emotional skin, so I'm highly impacted stuff. That's another facet of this beautiful personality disorder I've been blessed with. And I can hear something and boom, I can be in tears, or boom, it is whatever. And I just it's part that and part the musician within me, and I'm just like, cool. Everyone else has got to hear this. I've got to share this.
Man.
It's that energy. When it goes, oh, right, plump it into the podcast, then I want to get their artwork, and I want to find out about the band, and and all this kind of stuff. And
I absolutely love that about you. Like, it comes through so authentically in what you do, that like you are genuinely so excited about discovering this new music that you want to share it, and then that excitement is so contagious. I mean, I'm
so glad.
I've really come to just like totally trust your recommendations, your podcast, whatever. I listen to the podcast every time without fail, because I know that guaranteed, man. I haven't like I've loved like every single song that you've ever shared.
Thanks. That's awesome,
on the podcast and stuff, especially. Every time I know that I'm going to discover like at least a good handful of new artists that I've never even heard of. And I always go and follow them because they're always top quality and deserve that, attention or that extra bit of praise. And just as you've basically highlighted them to do so, it's awesome.
It's interesting because there isn't a lot of crap out there,
You
go through most other genres. Yeah. You'll find a lot of shit.
Oh, in other genres. Yeah. I'm with you.
You'll find just a lot of it's just so much. But with metal, there's always a lot of it's mostly like fantastically good content. I suppose the only thing that lets bands down, and it's happened in my case, is production ability or production affordability.
Yeah, sure.
There's the percentage rate of being able to find something that's really good is the strike rate is like so high.
I'm with you.
And especially when you go around the countries, because obviously I sort of pick up music from all over the world. And there's this thing in some other countries, I think particularly the sort of like colder, more Nordic ones, the investment in things like music education and what have you. You do well in music, it's almost like it's the same view from society that you'd get from being a lawyer or something, here in the UK. And I think that's lacking here at home in the UK. Investment in sort of music projects, in music in schools and in prisons. Funnily enough, I've been I was involved in there in repairing some equipment. They're like, yeah, we've got this, we've got that. Go down, and it's just like, wow, this is your investment in this. If you're trying to get people creative, give them the tools to do it. And I think the UK is quite resistant to. They put the music industry as quite, low key. And then when it comes to something like metal, that it probably gets pushed down a bit more. I don't know.
Well, yeah,
there's maybe a view, but yeah, there's a lot of strong metal everywhere.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, and I mean, there's Nordic countries, no doubt, are pretty special with that. There's a hell of a lot of incredibly good metal music, especially coming. From
absolutely. Do you know one thing that surprises me? Oh, well, it doesn't surprise me, but one thing I was surprised and impressed by in that version of surprise was I started doing these reaction type review type videos. And I suppose they're actually more of a reaction than a review, because I sort of see people they listen to some music and then they comment and they go, oh, they got this going on at this frequencies, and oh, they've got the this mixolydian bit and whatever, and I'm just like, hey, that's really impressive. I'll do that as a way of kind of filling in the gap between monthly podcasts. Although that said, the monthly podcast is turning into more bi-weekly podcast because I'm just keep finding stuff to talk about or to play. But I have all that music theory and that knowledge and that analytical stuff going in my head, but I can't sit there and go, oh well, this was mixed well with that. And so I'd rather so I just kind of and I look at my videos and I think I set myself up for another reaction video and I think this isn't good, and I just think I feel like I'm going down this is not a path I should be going down. But then the band will come back, or a musician on the band will come back, or some viewer will come back and they go, oh my God, like you've hyped this up so well. We were having so much, well, the comment I got was we're having so much fun watching you sort of like we, sort of enjoy our EP so much, literally. It's I think that was from Heartlight, and the two of them had basically sort of like spent the evening watching their half an hour EP or whatever it is, so it's music they know, it's music they probably still enjoy but don't want to be hearing, but they sat down and watched the whole thing, and
again you have that style with the reactions that's just so natural and authentic. Like you're basically just filming yourself listening to the music and just loving it, and you just have massive grins on your face, and it's just like pure in that way that like, wow, you're just sharing how genuinely excited you are about this music, and again that energy is contagious. So yeah, it's cool, man. I love it.
Yeah. Cheers. Yeah. And I suppose this is the phase of my life at my most authentic. I suppose after you've kind of been through the bits that I've been through, and the recent settings that I've come out from, you get an opportunity to. Well, not everyone gets an opportunity to have that big fat red hard reset button pushed. Mm-hmm. And I come out with that button firmly sort of pushed and coming back out into the community. It's you see the world again with a child's eyes almost, but with an adult mind. So I've been blessed by that opportunity. In fact, that I've made the best of it, and I've been able to come out and go, okay, right, I now see the world as this. Yes, you've got to do some of the humdrum, but no. I don't have to live up to other people's expectations. No, I don't have to be concerned what everybody else thinks about me all of the time. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes, these are the proclivities that I've got that are dangerous, which is why I'm 603 days sober.
Mm-hmm.
Now, thank you. And so everything is much better sort of tamed within me now, and I could go, right, okay, so what is it I should be doing? Well, I need a job. I need a job that I'm going to mostly enjoy. What do I like doing? Well, I like cooking. I've been in and out of that game, a while. So I've gone back to that. And okay, yes, it's work. You get your days where it's rubbish and you've got various sort of intercompany political stuff that goes on. But by and large, you enjoy it. Buddhism helps a lot with that. Buddhism teaches us that life is suffering, and it's the best way to kind of navigate our way through that and not get caught up in the whole ego sort of side of things that I'm hard done by. So it has a lot of commensurate sort of connectivities and similarities with the psychology as well. Mm-hmm. So what should I be doing? So the job, cooking, and then my free time is music. It's not bars. Well, sometimes it's bars, but that's to view music. But it's not bars in the traditional sense. It's not exotic partners, shall we say? It's not pursuit of how long can I stretch a day out before I'm too tired to even function and what have you. It's not stretching out meaningless conversations and connections with people that they're just there for one thing and very unhealthy. So viewing the world with almost like a child eyes allows you to be authentic. So I've certainly found what it is I'm about, and I'm just going to keep doing that. And and as long as everyone's loving it, then that's an added bonus. I don't mind if everyone's not loving it. I'm still going to do it anyway. I've done 3 albums to almost nobody hearing it. And hey, if this podcast can make that change, it's so much better. So please. One day I might be able to derive something that's closely assuming an income out of it. I don't know. it's possible. But at the moment, I'm just enjoying the journey. I'm meeting lots of interesting people. I'm sure it can lead to things like collaborations and stuff. And you never know. Might meet someone who knows someone who might like my music, who might decide to sign me, and then I might end up sort of being on a tour, or I could end up as a keyboardist for a band that I featured on the podcast because they've invited me backstage, and I've had those invites, but I couldn't afford to go to the particular festival that we're playing at because I'm starting my life again. But next year, so
cool,
it's sometimes as a musician, maybe you don't need to focus so much on the playing and the recording. You have to sort of immerse yourself in everything else that goes on, and then that's where like how many musicians are they go into like teaching or something. It's still something connected, and I suppose if I was really honest with myself in my younger days, this is what all I wanted to do. I didn't really want to do like any sort of the community stuff. So that element has changed as I've aged. I wouldn't have accepted a teaching job, but as a musician, but I might consider it in future if the right opportunity came about and it sort of fitted. So it's about also being open, and it's a bit of a creative path, and just keep being creative and keep the connections going, and things will happen. And I think that's a good message of advice to anyone, or any band or any musician. Sort of struggling, going like, okay, I know I'm reasonably good at what I do, but it's kind of going nowhere. Just keep plugging at it. Don't worry about when the prize is coming. Focus on the journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the more you immerse yourself in the journey, the more things you see. Because we can walk to work. Let's talk about our day jobs. We can walk to work, and in our mind, we're going from A to B. How much stuff do we miss when we're on the way? How much of the journey do you remember? But if you're open-minded on the journey, you're going to notice, nice-looking houses, nice-looking people, perhaps. Plants, trees, skies, the weather, the feel of the breeze. So it's that kind of mindset. That's what I urge people to adopt. Just do the journey. Things will happen, and when things do happen, they tend to happen quite quickly, and then they quickly become connected to something else. Like, for instance, I'm here today being interviewed for the first time ever, making a complete absolute fool of myself. But what's new,
No, not at all, man. No, that's great. That's honestly, it's fantastic advice. It's really, really stellar advice for people to take. I can say for sure, like you, that I definitely suffered from not implementing that properly in the past, and have had to learn to open up more and more in that way. So
you're doing a bloody good job of it, I must admit.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you. But
it took me a little while to connect, because you've got various different things going on with Love Anniverse, Love Anarchy, and then when you get into Love Anniverse, then you've got different characters doing things. It took a little bit of absorption, but no. Now the music is coming. Now you've got sort of tangible products coming, there, and I've heard them. You've probably had some of them. You're kicking about for a while, but now I've sort of heard of it. I'm starting to get the whole framework of it all, and I'm just this is really exciting. Of course, I want to ask questions, but I'm going to save that for maybe when I interview you, perhaps. But, my inquiring mind is sort of it sort of goes overdrive. So I've been careful not to switch this the other way and be.
Yeah, I know what you mean, man. Yeah, I think that I would have to try and be conscious about the same on if I went on anybody else's podcast too. Yeah. But no, just going back to what you said about enjoying the journey, being there in the moment, and I think that another big part of what you said is just being willing to sort of give out, so much, like unconditionally, just like to give to the community. In that way that, in the way that you've done, which is like you're just genuinely spending a good portion of your time providing a platform to other artists. And yeah, sure, part of it maybe can be considered part of your own marketing, as it were, being able to put your music in there and stuff. But really, there is such a genuine passion that comes through for finding these other artists and giving them a platform that, as you said, like, you'd be happy even if people aren't watching it or whatever, like you're still going to do it anyway. Like at the very least, you've got those other bands and stuff that are seeing it and they're watching it and they really appreciate that, you know. And as you say, that then makes those connections. It opens those doors and those conversations and builds those relationships, you know. And you're not doing it because you expect that when you feature that person, they should do whatever at all.
I mean, there's a percentage of bands that will literally, we got the podcast up and they might just sort of like go and watch their portion, you know, and then forget the rest of the episode. You know, that
people are busy, you know, maybe another time they wouldn't.
Yeah, so it's human nature. There's that, you know, and there will be instances where maybe I don't hear anything back at all.
Sure, yeah.
You know? But overall, you know, everyone's just been like, wow, this kind of thing sort of, you know, exists. There's no barrier to entry, you know, because another attachment to sort of forming this idea was I came out, I kind of put my albums back up on Spotify and I was trying to get airplay on internet radios and things like that. And it's just like, please fill out this form, please conclude this, you know, they want the picture, they want the narrative, they want the EPK, they want your blood type and all this kind of a stool sample, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just like, wow, after the 15th go at this, you know, I'm just like, I could do this. Why am I asking them to appear? Half of them are so multi-genre and multifaceted. You know, whilst they might have a large audience, you're probably only going to capture the bit that is relevant to me is only, say, if their audience is this big, the bit that's relevant to me is only that big, and the amount of people that are actually going to listen to it is about that big. You know, and I thought, why don't I just do this? You know. Why don't I just appear on my own show and make a show that I actually are going to enjoy listening? Because that was another key determinator. You know, I'm playing and I'm listening to their show and I'm like, am I enjoying this? I'm like, not as much as I could be, you know?
Yeah. I think
giving to the community. Yeah. And I think it's kind of important, you know, that we do that. It's very hard now because let's think about it. Think about it in my case, or in the case of a solo artist, we sit in our bedroom, we write music, we put it on Spotify. We start an Instagram, put my teeth back in, an Instagram account with 0 followers. The first followers are going to be likely people that we know, our friends and what have you. Then we've got to kind of sort of like approach sort of random people. There's not a lot of an opportunity to sort of get feedback or to reach an audience. So the podcast kind of helps sort of uplift that. I mean, my only wish in this giving back to the community, I only wish that the numbers were more significant. But, you know, I need to remember, I've started in May. It's organic. It is growing. It's growing at a lightning rate.
Which is great, man.
And, I'll be happier when I've achieved a base that really, really, really does help that musician that has just put something absolutely astonishing up on, say, Bandcamp or Spotify, likely Bandcamp because it's free, and they've got no money, they've got no followers, they don't know anyone, you know, and I play it and then boom, you know, they get something like 1,000 plays, which actually at 0.02 pence per, you know, play, as is what the going rate is now, which I think is an absolute abomination. And is an absolute fucking disgrace. But that might actually be something tangible to them. Oh, there you go. I didn't think to put my phone on silent. I apologize.
That's all right.
So that's where I want to get to. Because if I can do that'd be fantastic. You know, imagine it. Someone brand new comes on the scene, absolutely, then they go boom. And then someone else slightly elevated than my position takes notice of them. You know, and then, you know, a year later, they're on they're on sort of stage 3 on some festival. You know, that would be ideal. That's if I can get to that, I would be really, really happy.
Oh man, that's great. That's great,
and particularly even happier if I've managed to drag that person out of the doldrums to continue doing their music and what have you, and maybe give up some vice or bad, or negative,
Yep.
like proclivity, or drops of maladaptive coping strategy, and then they focus on their music, and then they get featured, and then they follow that process. That would be even better. Because you have to leave. You don't have to leave a legacy of some kind that is a little egotistical, but with no family to speak of in the past, and no sort of plans to have one in future, no one's gonna. My Spotify albums will disappear after my demise. There's no lasting legacy in music anymore. It lasts as long as your lifetime. So it'd be nice to leave something a little, even just a little nugget or something behind in perhaps other people's music career. I will be in my 60s and sort of 20-something years time and be less capable as a musician. I could still do something like this perhaps, but I probably won't be touring the globe in my 70s or 80s. Who knows? I could be, but there will be younger people that and if the environment of the world today is so uncertain, and it looks even worse in 20 years time, to perhaps have uplifted someone in a way, that would be cool. That would be of the purpose that I subscribe to, and would have been worth living.
Oh, that's so good, man.
And I think that somehow goes to ameliorate stuff that's the trouble I got myself into, the wasted time that I've kind of put into things, and heals the tortures that I endured to get there. I think that would resolve everything for me.
Great, man. Great. Well, I think that it's a really noble cause, and it's all as well very realistic. It's doable. I totally believe that you're on. You're making great progress on that path. So it's cool, man. It's inspiring to hear you talk about it, and I'm rooting for you all the way with that, man.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
So let's just I want to let's speak a little bit about more specifically about your music and you as an artist, as a composer. You've mentioned a few times about your 3 albums from the Callison series.
Yeah.
Perhaps we can start there and talking about sort of what you've been doing previously, and then also we can move on to what you're going to be doing going forwards. Okay,
so the Callison series wasn't intended to be a series. Callison is actually an area in Thailand. I dated a Thai lady who I'm still very much friends with. She'd been in the UK 20 years before, and as I joke amongst my friends, I didn't import one. But so I used to go over there quite a lot, and it's kind of a spiritual home to me. And I don't know, it looks kind of cool in the font that designed and whatnot, and it just I thought, do I label it a track name like everybody else? No, I wanted to sort of do my own thing, and then it kind of just sort of stuck. The name has stuck, and I think because of my proclivity towards this maniac kind of sort of style of composing music, I think there will be a Callison 4 at some point. Nice. Although I am going more vocal, which we'll come on to. But I suppose the Callison series is a bit of a story of healing and destruction all at the same time, because these were composed during that curve of being very much into and coming out of cocaine addiction. So it got to a point where I obviously realized 5 years in as an addict that I realized that, okay, this is not sustainable. It kind of eviscerates every aspect of your life, and it exacerbates all of your mental dysfunctions. And I, at that time, had an undiagnosed personality disorder, which it typically leads people into sort of maladaptive coping strategies and soothing behaviors such as partying, gambling, sex, drugs, done all of those to their fullest. And so there's one step I decided, okay, so I need to sort of focus on becoming me. I learned about the disorder once it was diagnosed, and learned that there's this destabilizing identity. And once I learned that, I was like, a light bulb moment. So I started researching the disorder and coming to terms with all of it and things you could do. But what it boils down to is about doing stuff that is you, that are your passions, and just maintaining that and knowing that the emotional aspects of a disorder are going to interfere with everything else. But if you can keep those grounded, you're going some way. So music was a thing I definitely need to invest in. So spent money on that. That reduced the amount of money I was spending on cocaine. So it also kept me away from certain people. I suppose I took to not doing cocaine in a room full of absolute inebriates and users and fellow addicts and all that kind of stuff. But I instead actually started just doing it on my own with the keyboards, which is great because you get to spend tons of time, because it just expands the time horizon. And I suppose in the beginning, I've started using a bit more because it's like, hey, I've got this new stuff going on and I want to do it 24/7. But gradually it sort of came down and it's like, hey, the inner voice was saying, hey, you're a musician. Start talking about yourself internally as a musician. And then the musician within me sort of woke up and actually believed that was something that was something I was capable of doing. And the more of that essence that come up, the more I needed to feed the destructive elements of that were telling me that I'm not worth a goddamn thing, that I should do away with myself, that this isn't where I should be in my life, or just all the negative stuff. It started to balance that out. It's almost like I've been living with the devil on my shoulder, sort of huge, and it had grown from this side to this huge hulking, sort of beam off kind of character, and it started to build up another side, and it was like, okay, so fine. So if I want to be doing stuff with our music, I've then got to switch my moral kind of attitudes around. So I've got to avoid conflict with people. I've got to be kinder to myself. I've got to focus on things like diet. I've got to turn up for work on time and end work on time and be good for the shift, because that produces the money that then creates the next plugin that I'm buying, or the pair of strings that I need because the guitar hasn't had an overhaul for like 3 years, and all that kind of stuff. So everything just all linked into that. And then slowly but surely, over a period of a couple of years, these albums came out. The first one, I think, that came out November 2019, and I was doing quite well at the end of the release. My usage was like very much down. Then came Callousing 2. I took a bit of a backward step. I kind of let someone live with me who such a bad idea. They ended up staying rent free, and then of course they were in and out the pub all of the time, and then they're in and out of the coke all the time, and then that kind of just ended up on my desk. And then I sort of my living room became the music studio / sesh quarters. So, but Callousing 2 is even more energetic, I think, because of that. And when you look at the track titles, the treacherous whispers of tempestuous whispers, and something winters, or something like that. If you look at all of the track titles, you can almost see an internal dialogue that is at conflict with yourself. It's like, this is a path that's leading to nowhere, versus this is a path of redemption. There's a lot of chaos in there, and you have lots of light music, and then damn, it's like dark and heavy and monstrous and self-eviscerating and all that kind of stuff. So I got out of that cycle, got cleaner, and got the cleanest I ever was. And then, of course, I had this is the legal side of things coming through with the financials and the custody kind of pending. I knew where it was going to end up, and I needed to kind of write again and write quickly. So Callousing 2 came out, I think it was July 2020. I was sentenced in December 2020. I was kind of aware of where it was heading by about the end of October 2020. So November became the project of Callousing 3. And that was all done in a month. And there was some long nights and there was some usage because I knew that I would basically be, in an environment where I would be doing nothing for a very long time. So it's and that is quite my most dramatic sort of work. Yeah. And I impressed myself with things like, speed of playing. And, I was fortunate enough to have a friend who kind of kept me a bit on the leash with the lapsing and all that kind of stuff. And then by the end of it, I was, really happy with what I'd achieved in such a short period of time. And that, I suppose, sowed the seed to not be so downhearted when I went in, because, I was capable of doing this. Calicin-free underpins me as a musician. I think I'm really happy. Also happy with all of the production style and budget and the lack of knowledge and stuff. But I'll be addressing that. But with regards to a composer, I'm definitely happy with that title now. And Calicin-free kicked that into touch, and it was a necessary process. So moving on. Custody period of time. Just beforehand, I decided what my next album would be. And that would be about the life and times of Genghis Khan. That gives you huge scope for all of the things that I love, drama, battle type, rip your face off, heavy, demonic type styles, huge orchestras, Eastern instrumentals, arrangements. If you listen to some of my music, you'll know that I could be in quite classically Western sort of metal, and then suddenly it's like switched into sort of East Asian or whatever. So this gives me an excuse to play with that, in a larger capacity. Tell a story. I want to kind of do it along the theme of, along the sort of style of something similar to Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds. Okay. If you've listened to that album.
So would you, certainly, many times. You would have the narration and such then, essentially?
There'll be narration, there'll be vocals. Whether or not I'll get someone else on it, I'm warming to the idea. Unfortunately, my past have sort of been always been my baby, and I suppose it's been my coping strategy for everything.
Very therapeutic kind of process.
So to open it up to others, I think it's something that I will undo. I will get onto. I've started composing now, but not for Genghis. There's a reason behind that. But that's the kind of style, that's the kind of thing I want to be aspiring to. Genghis, I want to be absolutely massive. I want it to be perfect in production time. I want it to take a lot of time. Now, my material generally doesn't take a lot of time to do. I'm quite, prolific?
Stream of consciousness.
Yes.
I think we've spoken about it before. You had that very stream of consciousness style of you start and then see where it takes you.
So I want it to be a much more sort of rigid, sort of perfect, polished endeavor.
The masterpiece. Yeah.
Yes, the masterpiece, the life's work, I suppose.
Nice.
So where I'm at now is obviously I've got to transcend this gap between being instrumental, sort of a bit shy and retiring, and I'm clearly not shy and retiring, am I? Really, on the face of it, if I actually, have now developed some confidence in myself, I suppose. So I have written a few vocal tracks in the past. One of those is The Skin That I'm In, and that's kind of been given a reboot, thanks to the help of the masterful help of Adrian Duadu from Phoebus the Night. We were just talking, and I formed this strategy of I should write some vocal stuff because I'm a bit of a niche within a niche. And I thought, well, hang on, I've got some stuff that's mostly just sort of some random stuff. You've got sort of a breakup song. You've got a song that kind of reinvents the returning of Christ, the theory in 2028, but turns it on its head and instead is the daughter of Satan. That appeared, I think you were listening to episode 2 earlier. So I'm gonna reboot that so it's actually mixed, mastered, produced properly, and that. And then I've got some other sort of oddities kicking about. So I'm just rebooting those. And I'm actually writing again. I've recently, just in the last couple of weeks or last week, moved all my kit out of storage and got it all booted up. And of course, I've started writing straight away. And I could have done that could have gone into the Genghis side of things, but I was like, no, it sounds predominantly Calicin. So, you know, it is just an emotional outpouring. It's that pent up, I've had a long period away from music, and now it's like, you know, it's just, yeah. But I have put words to it. So that was going to be a forthcoming single. And I'm going to carry on with that vein, release a single every, I don't know, as periodicity allows. In my head, I'd like to say, you know, once a month, once a couple of months, but in practicality, with everything else that I do, and the podcast eats up a lot of time as well. But so that's, I'm going into a more vocal, you know, arena. I'm really excited about it, actually. So 3rd of September, Skin That I'm In comes out. It's a short one. It's a sort of a woesome sort of like breakup kind of story. I broke up with someone, locked myself in a room, wrote something that was very different to all of the instrumental stuff. And it's a very sort of traditionally hard-hitting, heavy sort of metal with a absolute huge guitar solo in it and all that kind of stuff, and kind of it's representative of that moment when you realize you absolutely should be letting go of someone because it's just toxic to keep them on, and the liberation that comes with that decision. So that's coming out for you to, you know, get your teeth into and tell me what you think. So
beautiful, man. Yeah, that's awesome. Really exciting. You've got a lyric video and stuff that you're going to be releasing.
Yeah, I've released bits and pieces of it as sort of a part of a loosely thrown together strategy, which gets interrupted by phone calls from work saying, "Can you come in?" or me going, "Oh, I found this music and I'm going to record this," and then also, "Oh, I'm composing." It's like, I've got a lot going on at the moment, and I'm conscious of that. So I've booked a week off holiday early September.
Cool. Oh, nice.
Just to get on with it, just to catch up and just have a good old splurge at it, because, you know, otherwise you're just on this treadmill all the time, and, you know, and work's picking up as well. And I've got things to do with them, like courses and promotions and stuff like that. So I need to, in September, I need to have music time, and work focus time. I've got some courses and stuff to do. So it's a change to the schedule. So I'm looking forward to it. Well, hopefully I'll come out of it all better paid, and with loads more content and loads more toys that I can buy. So, you know, it's a consequence of it, you know.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great. No, I'm very excited for you, man. You know, by the time this podcast episode comes out, you're going to be about to embark on that release. Coming in a few days, and that's really cool that you've taken off that time to allocate to that. You know, I'm really kind of wishing you all the best for
thank you,
for that launch, because I know that this is a big moment for you. I mean, I love your compositional style on the Calicin albums, and it's, you know, pretty much all instrumental music, right? As you say, you've had the odd track dotted here or there with the vocals, but because it sounds like it's been such a, you know, therapeutic process for you making music, a really kind of personal endeavor, it is amazing. It's in the way that, like, as you've even explained it, you know, you are telling so much kind of story through your music just by the emotion that's in there, by this kind of stream of consciousness, or almost like an insight into your head and your feelings and everything just through music. Yeah. And yeah, it is kind of chaotic, or, you know, in purely musical terms, we would just call it like prog, right? You know, there's one thing happening here and it will evolve into this, and then it will jump into this. And so it's really progressive metal, symphonic metal kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of instrumental, symphonic, progressive. There was a fourth word in there. It's on my EPK somewhere buried, but yeah.
Right, nice.
And then, of course, then you'll hear some of the pieces. It was something to sort of go into this jazzy section, or go into some sort of like, see, it would just go completely, or it goes into sort of like a militaristic type, sort of like band type stuff. I've got a couple of bits where it drops into that. And yeah, you're right. It is a stream of consciousness, and it does, I suppose, tell a story of the the kind of, emotional states that I'm in at the time, but also the compositional ability that feeds off those the compositional outpouring that has fed out put my teeth back in, fed out of those emotional states. Because I don't write a song and then go, hey, okay, I need to record this, and okay, right, you know, which is really good for me in this style of music, but really bad when I am asked to perform it.
Right. Yeah.
Because
sure.
I don't have any, because I don't practice it. You know, so I'll open up and I use Reaper, you know, mainly because it's free and because I've used it that many years now. I don't have that patience to go round and investigate a new DAW.
Why? Reaper does the job perfectly.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll open up a blank DAW and I'll just come up with a chord progression. And then I'll add to it, and then I'll just keep. I don't know, think, like, where can I go next with it? And I'll do that, and then I'll get tired out at some point. Sometimes not. Sometimes I'm able to compose a whole piece in a couple of hours. You know, but other times I'll just switch off, and then the next day I'm in a completely different mindset, and I've gone, okay, where did I leave off? And then I'll go, okay, now we just do this, and it's like, no, that is so crazy. That doesn't work, but I can when I can start to hear I can make it work, and then it's you have to sort of stitch it together. So you sort of you have this block here and this block here, two different directions. So I'll pinch some of the phraseology from there and put it there, and then sort of automate it up so it sort of sinks in. So some of the adjustments can be quite atonal or arrhythmic. That they wouldn't normally make sense, but it becomes it's like surgery of Frankenstein, you know. It's like the Frankenstein of music sometimes, and and that is a challenge and a creative process in itself. Yeah, and it takes people off guard. And I find the other thing that it does is I can create a 7-minute piece of music, but people only think that it's lasted 3.
Right. Yeah.
Because of the dynamism. And that's great. That's absolutely great. You know, I love it. I love big, long 20-minute sort of proggy sort of tracks. But sometimes when they keep returning to the same sort of thing, you know, it's just yeah. But when you get bands like Dream Theater, you know, Octavarium is one of my favorite tracks of theirs.
And that just in the background. Yeah.
Yeah. I
was checking that out.
So this is my new pad. And you know, I wanted a visual thing, you know, for when you wake up. When you live in a small environment, you wake up, and sometimes I can feel a bit pinned to the bed and whatever. So I know it's a little bit, you know, adolescent of me having lots of posters on my wall, perhaps, but it's a visualization.
It's inspirational.
It looks great in the background. It's all nice and shiny, and it's the cheapest way of getting it done as well. So these are all either favorite albums from each sort of band, or the one that got me into them.
So man, this is it's a great collection. Epica.
Yeah, what we got Nightwish,
Dream Theater,
Balsagoth. Have you heard them?
Balsagoth is one that I might have to look into.
Okay, so
I'm a pretty big fan of everything on your wall, but that one I'm not particularly familiar with.
Okay, so Balsagoth, very interesting. The album that got me into them was just a random find in a one of these sort of flea market types, you know. At the back you had the guy with the long hair, looked a bit sort of rocky and washed out, and he had just loads and loads of CDs just sort of disorganized everywhere, and everything was anything from a quid to you know, £8 max, you know. And it was just a great place to go sort of burying and finding stuff, and that's how I mostly got into this kind of music. I mean, I liked a little bit of Iron Maiden, and I liked a little bit of Marilyn Manson, the Antichrist Superstar album. But other than when I was sort of say 15, 16, but apart from that, metal really wasn't a thing for me. And then I stumbled upon Cradle of Filth in HMV, just walking around looking for an excuse to spend my money. And it was the album cover that caught me. And I thought, I remember that band name, and I remember the documentary that they were in, which I referred to in episode 4 of my podcast. What was it called? Living with My Enemy, where do you know the documentary?
So we spoke a bit about it, just for context for anybody listening. So you did a couple of bonus episodes on your podcast, right?
Yeah.
Which were really fantastic episodes, I thought, where you're basically telling your personal story but you're doing it via music, and so you have Cradle of Filth as the featured artist, and you essentially talk about your relationship with the band and the band's music, and basically where you were at those times in your life through that, which is a phenomenal way to storytell. I think you pulled that off really cool, man.
Excellent.
I really love that. Well, I've complimented you on those already, and yeah, so naturally we have spoken a bit about that. Yeah, I remember you talking about this BBC documentary that they were in. Was it BBC?
It was BBC.
I actually haven't seen that. When I heard you mention that sounded hilarious.
Yeah, it is a laugh. It's basically teenage for the viewers. I mean, obviously, I'd urge you go and check out my podcast episodes. But
definitely,
for those on the fly, it's essentially teenage boy. He's got his Cradle of Filth T-shirts and posters and everything on the wall.
Yeah,
and his mum is like, "Oh my god, this is horrible satanic panic." So I can't. Yeah, that sort of thing. And she wishes he was out of it, and and then the documentary crew are filming this, and then they think that the best idea for TV gold would be to pack mum on the tour bus with the band.
With Cradle of Filth.
And of course, she is absolutely mortified, and but she drifts from this to then realizing actually, they're not all crazy Satanists, church burning bastards. They are actually human beings and an art form. And this is a comeback to a lot of people that I've sort of met or heard of or seen, and they criticize metal and symphonic and black metal in particular for being all of this kind of nasty stuff. When you read the lyrics, and when you kind of or look at the concept albums, there's so many stories of the path from darkness to light. And you commented earlier on in this interview, about people that us musicians using this as our way of transgressing our individual sort of problems. And it's just an epic storytelling way of doing that. Some of us musicians will tell that story directly, we'll sing or talk about those particular problems. Others will dress up a masquerade and they'll come up with a concept and they'll talk about that journey from darkness to light as a way of
just an artistic
displaying. So it's an interesting documentary, but I'd watched it as a 14 or 15-year-old or something like this, and I thought this music is bollocks. I like the imagery, but all this screaming and just noise.
It's just noise.
Shit. But I saw the album cover, and I thought, okay, I was quite into my Anne Rice.
The Cruelty and the Beast. Album cover, right?
I was into my Anne Rice books at the time, Interview with a Vampire. And don't watch the films, read the books. They're amazing. Funny enough, she's denounced all of that writing now, in a complete twist. But anyway, and I picked it up and I read the lyrics, and then that was what got me. And then, as I say, back in the day, you could actually take the CD and put it on a player on the wall and listen to it. And of course, all that you have that great sort of choral opening, and then it's like, and I was like, okay, I am buying this. That's it. And I listened to it. I listened to it in my CD Walkman that the disc skipped every time the bus went over a bump. And then I got it home and yeah, the one. And then that was it. Then of course, I started walking around in search of anything else remotely like it, which took a while. But of course, I stumbled across things like Dimmu Borgir, who they're up there, and then other heavier styles like Napalm Death, and there's music from the Enemy Business, which is still my favorite album of theirs. Nice. So that's why up there, and that's how I came across Balsa Goth. Now, I suppose if there's any band that are kind of like my stuff, it's them. They're very instrumental focused. They have a lot of narration and occasional sort of singing phraseology. They're quite focused on like futuristic-y type space type stuff. So if you're into that kind of stuff, which I'm not as much, but they're not overboard with it in a sort of like this is a recreation of Star Wars way, that would put me off. But that album, I suppose, was fundamental into going, there's music like the stuff that I do, and then I started to embrace the more heavier dynamics and the double pedal type of sort of drummers, and actually frame my music, the stuff that I was creating, as metal. So there's been a couple of people that I've introduced this album to, people have not heard it, and they go, well, if those were your sort of idols, you've kind of surpassed them, which was a nice compliment to hear, but not cool. I truly believe, really. They are awesome. But they don't do a lot. There's a few other albums, they definitely should be bigger than they were, or are, but definitely a cool band. Definitely cool.
I'm definitely going to listen to that record after this podcast.
Yeah.
So Balsa,
the Power Cosmic. The Power Cosmic. Yeah. That's the album that got me into it. And it's funny, I'm like this with bands as well. Like, I do listen to all their other albums, and occasionally there's like Dream Theater. I love all their albums. But when it comes, and Cradle of Filth as well, up until some of the most recent ones that I'm now just getting into. But Epica, for example, there's maybe 2 albums I like of theirs.
Really?
Balsagoth, I like all their. I've listened to all their albums; they're okay, but I keep playing that one. Nightwish, I keep going back to once. It's funny how just one album, one album sets the template.
We've spoken a little bit about that the other day. But, I don't want to go down too much of a rabbit hole here, but we're both such like music nerds in this way that, I am curious. Like these are really some of my favorite bands and records as well. And so Epica, like I get what you mean. Like the sound, I guess, kind of changed or evolved from the earlier records to the later stuff. Like for me, their catalog is incredible. I love absolutely everything that they've done. But it's a bit more of a rawer and kind of almost tidier sound on the early stuff. Whereas the more it's gone along, it just sounds absolutely massive wall of sound. I
think the reason why I'm like that, I think it's because it's the emotional impact.
Yeah, and like the nostalgia of like the connection you have with that record and stuff like that.
And it's just like that emotional framework just kind of kicks up every time I listen to that one. So I just think I'm going to listen to that one.
I get what you mean. So I mean, like, Cry for the Moon from that first Epica album for sure. Like,
This isn't the album that got me into them. It was actually the Divine Conspiracy, but I couldn't find.
Divine Conspiracy is fantastic, man.
I couldn't find a decent enough image to blow up and get posted.
I see.
Yes, I know. In supporting metal artists, I am now being a bit duplicitous in the sense that I have actually just copied the images and got them printed out at my own cost. But it's my studio. Yeah,
that's it. You're not selling them, so
no.
But yeah, I mean, I remember seeing "Cry for a Moon" in that video, years ago, and that always still is so impactful in that way. And Divine Conspiracy as well certainly has that factor.
Phantom Agony on this one.
Phantom Agony, that's the first one.
I watched that video on YouTube, the one where they're all that. I watch that regularly,
it's still so good, man. It's
tingle, heads up on the arms, all that kind of stuff every time.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. So I get the kind of emotional, almost like comfort connected with those ones, but then also just from a purely like epic metal standpoint, I feel like they just level it up again and again from album to album. It's insane. But like I gotta quickly go through Dream Theater. You said you like every Dream Theater album, which is awesome. I agree with you as well. I also do, even though there is a lot of controversy in there. People like to nitpick the Dream Theater catalog a lot. Most divisive one is the Astonishing, right? What were your thoughts on that one?
Okay, so that's one of my less listened to ones.
It's very long.
It's yeah.
So bigger investment.
Yeah, I need to give it another listen before I sort of comment on it. I've listened to it probably a handful of times. And that's probably not out of choice. It probably just rolled on the back and I just kind of kept it.
I'm with you.
I'm just trying to think. What was another one of their recent ones? What was it called?
There was,
I forget the cover.
The most recent one was A View from the Top of the World.
No. What was the one before that?
Distance Over Time, the one with
Distance Over Time. That I really like. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Cool.
I was struggling to think of the image.
The hand and the skull.
I really liked. I kind of view that as an Octavarian part 2, you know.
Yeah. I think that Octavarian was quite a turning point, I think. Yeah, great album. But I know Astonishing, like, it gets a lot of hate or is very divisive from Dream Theater fans. I personally really like it because it was a kind of like rock opera, right? And they had the whole more. But as you say, it's probably one of my least listened to ones because
what I like about Dream Theater, and it's probably why I like all of their stuff, and Opeth, the fall in that category.
That was the next one I wanted to get onto.
Particularly, so Still Life was the discovery. I bought it at random, not knowing who Opeth
Still Life is so good, man. Yeah.
And boom. And then from there, I went backwards and forwards. And I have to say, I love each album equally.
By Opeth, every album, the whole catalog.
Every album, because
I love that you said that, man. Yeah,
Opeth have got this fantastic ability and freedom of both contract and ability. You know, to just go, I'm going to play this today. I'm going to write this, and I'm going to put that out. Yeah. Like the difference between what's the one? There's one of the early ones. One with window pane. It sounds like a very 70s sort of like
Damnation.
That's it, Damnation. That's it. And then it's Deliverance after that.
Like, so they were like the duo ones. They basically
it's complete shade. You know, together. So they can go and put an album like that out, and they can go and do Ghost Reveries, which is
dude, Ghost Reveries is like hands down one of the best albums ever, man.
Yeah.
Like.
And then their most sort of recent stuff is it Encordia Venom, something like that.
Yeah, it was the most recent album.
Yeah, it's just so different, you know. But it's just brilliant music.
Oh, man.
You know. And
I'm so happy. I'm so happy that you. Yeah, I agree with you like completely. Opeth is hands down one of my favorite bands as well. But just as you say, I like the more recent stuff and how they like again controversially just dropped death metal completely, basically, and became more like modern prog rock band. Yeah, and it's all amazing music, like absolutely top notch, just as much as the old stuff is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, that's like masterful.
I would love them to I would love them to shove out a dose of heaviness. I'm sure it will come.
Well, they still do it live, you know. It's not like they've completely ditched that. So,
but it's new stuff. It's like it's kind of like I'm always writing and. You know, I'm always thinking, oh, what's the next piece? You know, I will be so destroyed when I get to an even age where my mental faculties are disappearing or my ability to even record or see or something, and I can write no more music. I just want these guys to just keep on writing music. You know, I want to hear what's next. What's next?
All gold, man.
What's next? You know, you know, I'd be absolutely terrible as their manager or something because I would just chain them to the studio and, you know, say, right, carry on writing. What's next?
Do you know what's so cool is their manager as well is actually Andy Farrow. And man, that's so cool. Like he runs a company called Northern Music. And that company, like the roster on that company is unbelievable. Like they only have about 9 clients.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, you have to check that out because when I clocked that this like one guy and this one company was basically managing all these bands, all these people basically, I just thought like, wow, like he's got about 9 clients and it's literally like he manages Opeth, he manages Devin Townsend, manages like Catatonia, Bloodbath, all of that, Paradise Lost, which is one of my all-time favorite bands as well.
Yes, this Devin Townsend guy I'm going to have to check out because I've had a couple.
If you're not familiar with Devin Townsend, oh man, that's a whole other world you're going to love, man.
This is the thing that's kind of barred me from sort of being a bit sort of social when I go out to bars and clubs is because I don't really follow the culture. I don't really follow sort of artists and news and media. I'd like to go out and find my own thing. I like to go out and write my own way and whatever. Yeah. So when I meet people and I'm like, oh yeah, I do this sort of metal stuff. They're like, oh, what about this? What about this? What about this? And I'll be like, and they're like, but yeah, are you really a metalhead? You know? You know,
I'm with you, man. I agree. I definitely come from a similar place. I'm just like trying to open myself up more to it now, as you are as well, you know, clearly. Yeah, man, there's only so much time, right? Like, you
gotta,
like,
and I think it's a thing that
discover...
wanes with age as well. You know, when you're in your 20s, you know absolutely everything that's going on and on and on. I'm 39 now, and it's just like, yeah.
All I would say is because
if I can remember my name, it's a bonus.
all I'd say is because we connect so much on so much of this music, like, Devin Townsend, you'd absolutely love, man, because it fits right in there, man. Yeah, so
there's a couple of people I've spoken to, new acquaintances down the area that I live, the bars that I go to, and I sort of listen to some of my stuff, and they've referenced, whether correctly or incorrectly, that name, Devin Townsend.
Because like you mentioned this, almost like you said, like a crazy scientist approach or something like that. I don't think that's quite the terms used, but like if there's one guy in metal that is connected to, is Devin Townsend. He's just like balls to the wall craziness, like just the mad scientist of metal, basically doing.
Okay, cool. Then I'm definitely it will be what I do. I will carve some time out today to download the
but his catalog is very expansive. Like he does everything from like chilled out meditation music to like balls to the wall extreme metal. So yeah, it's
okay, cool.
You'll like
where would I start with it?
That's such a good question, man. I mean, it depends what mood you're in, for, you know, where in the spectrum you go for
okay, so let's start at the extreme end of the spectrum, if you can think of it. I'm not, you know.
So he was in a band called Strapping Young Lad, which you might have heard of. Jim Hoglan was on drums and stuff. They have a few good. City was quite a breakthrough record in the like mid 90s, more industrial kind of sounding. But Alien is a really good album by Strapping Young Lad that is just balls to the wall heavy, man. There's a song on there called Love ? You'd love that, man. You'll love that. Listen to that. It's one.
I can remember Love ? So that's fine. That'll be thrown into my search bar very, very, very shortly.
Cool, man. Cool. Well, yeah. I mean, we could spend a whole podcast episode talking about like each individual artist that we both like, probably. So
well, you know, there's more that I'm going to be doing on that type of thing, because I did the Cradle of Filth and the narrative. So there's going to be some interesting additions to that. I've got some ideas sketched down. I know the bands I want to sort of talk about.
That's great, man.
And some of them might be a little bit surprising and maybe new to you, but I'm not going to say who they are. I'm just going to like put out there. So
no spoilers.
You have to wait. But
cool.
if I could, I'd be doing podcasts weekly and, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And if I could, I'd do it every day, you know.
I'm with you, man. I keep feeling a lot more push. Like I would love to do these podcasts more regularly as well. Yeah, it's just like I love this part, having a conversation with someone. It's just the fact that I've then got to do a ton of editing work and all of that stuff that makes it a lot more.
I'm quite grateful to the whole podcast thing, really. Okay. So when you've done too much cocaine, you get very sketchy, especially at sort of 8 o'clock in the morning. The birds are singing. All the obligations that you're going to miss are staring you in the face and you can't sleep. And your nervous system really wants you to sleep, but it is just on fire. You can't watch TV because it's all flashing and it's just, you know. So I started turning my back to the TV and listening to like some war documentary because you've got that monotonic type of thing. Then after I watched all the documentaries, or heard all the documentaries, I started to use podcasts as a sort of as an ability to come down. And it was through, I think it was like a Joe Rogan podcast, interviewed this chap called Jordan Peterson. And then I started picking up, you know, on his work, and I bought his book and read it. And that was probably, along with a bit of a mental health collapse, but with that book and those podcasts, that was the turning point in going, okay, I'm going to change this. I don't care. And I don't care what I'm going to go through to do it. And I know it's not going to be easy, but I'm going to take responsibility for it all. And everything that went before it, and so that was the turning point. And so to be sort of like on the other side of it, doing podcasts myself and on yours, and yeah, it's sort of like come full circle, you know.
That's so cool.
Doing podcasts every day, I watch things like, you know, the Jordan Peterson or the Michaela Peterson podcast, and then many others, and I don't find the time to watch them all. So how the hell do they, knowing how long it takes to put a podcast together, and I probably spent in the region of about 10 hours on the next one this month. You know,
man.
As I use more tech and do more this and upgrade this and have more windows going and this, I'm just like, how the hell do they do it? Although obviously there's a production team involved.
Exactly, that's how they do it. Like they are able.
This
to
is
just
what
do
I
the
need.
episode.
I need some Sonic Symphonic Podcast elves.
I'm feeling you, man. I'm at that same kind of thing. I'm like, I feel like I could do so much more if I had that sorted out. So yeah, I empathize with you. It's also funny that you said that like you got inspiration from me to like do podcast clips and things like that. Because funnily enough, my reference for my podcast clips was the Jordan Peterson podcast and Michaela Peterson's podcast.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Because I was thinking that they just looked really good, how they edited them in Reels with the captions done in that way where they're nice and bold and etc. So I was literally like referencing their Reels to make my own.
But it's just so much. It's so much additional work, isn't it? You know, but it's necessary. You've just got to keep it. So for the next one, that's what I'm going to do. I've got practiced at slicing it up. I've not got well practiced at posting lots of those slices all the time because it's work and what have you. But you know, the work is in the day job gets in the way. But I've made it easier on myself to make slices. So hopefully that I shall start looking a little bit more polished and what have you, and high resolution and all singing and dancing, and that to be the bait that can capture a few more listeners in. And also I do realize it's quite a commitment to listen to an hour's podcast, you know. Because I'm absolutely terrible at doing it to the people that have got millions of followers. So, you know, I'm with you, man. By slicing it up into shorts, and that's becoming quite a thing on YouTube now, is this shorts.
Yeah, they have the same format, basically.
They have the same format.
Shorts, Reels on Instagram and TikTok and whatever, you know.
There's a bit of a mental climb through acrobatics to sort of accept that, okay, you've set out to do an hour-long podcast, but in reality, most people aren't going to be able to swallow an hour's podcast. So I need to be able to break it up, but keep the quality and keep the enticement, and, you know, and so on and so forth. But I don't want it to get to it where a band loses out because I've cut, you know, so, you know. So if I've got to slice it all up, I've got to slice all of them up, and I've got to market them all equally and try and get, I'm
with you. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just about getting the most out of what you've made. So that same logic is what I apply. Is like, you know, great if people listen to the podcast episode. Obviously, that's the ideal result. But yeah, in terms of like the people that I would put it out on social media to, it's a very small percentage of them that will actually listen to the full thing. And that means that it goes to a lot more people by cutting those reels out of it. And some of them perform better than others for various reasons, whatever. But as long as I'm like consistent with them,
I was going to touch on that.
They connect with people.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that earlier. I think that might have been the thread that one of the threads that I lost, because I was talking about sort of the international aspect. Reaction and review video. I did one for a band called Orcus Dis in Mexico. Nice. And by then, at that time, I was getting sort of like a handful of each views. But by a handful, I literally mean less than 7. You know, it was that. And I put this one about Orcus Dis, and of course, you know, they don't have a huge sort of online presence or whatever. But suddenly, when they shared it, it was like got this avalanche of, you know, sort of like new subscriptions, you know, views and whatever. It really sort of blew up, not blew up in the kind of, you know,
but in relative terms.
But in relative terms, and I find that when I feature Mexican bands, their loyalty and actual, you know, proper engagement from their followers. You know, many of us, we're all guilty of it. Say we support a band, but what we do, we see a video and we like it and we'll scroll on to the next. You know, we don't often
it's just
always
the way it goes. Yeah.
Yeah. But these guys over there, they seem to be like really like, you know, and it's almost like it's a few years sort of, you know, back when, you know, when loyalty was, you know, sort of being much more actively engaged, you know.
I mean, bands do
nice.
often.
It
is, yeah. Bands have often spoken about audiences in like South America and stuff, like concerts and things, how they have that just like such passion in the culture for it, which it's awesome.
There's something special. There's something special there. Yeah. Maybe I should take the Sonic Symphonic podcast on tour and go and find out for myself. And that would be cool, right? I mean, that's possible. Yeah, that's possible. Man. You know, if going to gigs is possible in the UK, then going to gigs abroad is in the UK. Yeah. Or, you know, if I can get a bunch of bands that are featured on the podcast from one country together in one place, you know, go and do like a Mexican edition, go and do this, and then I get to see the world, you know, and then you become even more enmeshed in you know, other opportunities and playing in different studios and stuff, and then you've got more content that comes off the back of that, you know. And that's what I mean when I go back to looking at it with a child's eyes. It's like anything in my mind now, anything is possible. You've just got to do it, you know.
Yeah, man, I'm with you, and it's always inspiring to be in that mindset, and as well to put yourself in a position where you're with like-minded people that we can all encourage each other, and yeah, it's good, man. It's really good. So, like, I'm just conscious now of the fact that, as I said, there's so many topics here that we could probably ages and ages about.
Hey, no, you don't have to use all of it, man. I mean, I know what it's like. But we could go on for hours. But
we could. I mean, normally I basically I do either no editing or as little editing as possible, because I like, for better or for worse, that more kind of Joe Rogan type thing of a natural flowing conversation, you know. But yeah, we've been going for quite a while, so I think that
so I think really just to sort of just to finish it up, you know.
What would you like to say? Is there anything in particular?
Well, firstly,
that you'd like to make sure you get in there.
Okay, well, there's a couple of things. Thank you, obviously, for having me on your show.
Pleasure,
it's a great privilege. I'm glad to be sort of a part of your progress. Secondly, thanks to all the bands and everything that have like featured. You know, I get a lot of thank yous from them, and some really go an extra mile in terms of the sharing, and some, you know, have, you know, there's one chap that sort of got quite tearful in the sense that I managed to, you know, appreciate his concept album, got the whole concept, and, you know, it was the first kind of reaction. It's a great privilege to be part of those dynamics and those opportunities. And whilst a lot of people sort of kick back thanks to me, you know, I immediately kick back the thanks to them, because it's without their music, none of this would be possible. None of the success and compliments I've received on my music would have been possible without their music, because it's through their music that I featured my music, and so on and so forth. So, you know,
I love that.
I owe a lot to these guys, and, you know, and in regards to sort of personal, you know, aspects of your life, you know, if you're a musician, if you're in that band, if you're thinking of, you know, throwing your toys away and becoming, you know, the next best, you know, paralegal or whatever, don't do it. Don't do it. If music is something that makes you hum, keep at it. And if you're struggling with something, you know, talk to someone, talk to other musicians. If you're feeling isolated, get in the world, even if it's online to begin with, or through me or whatever. You know, this is us. This is our window to our soul. So, you know, keep it polished, keep it bright, keep it clean, and let the sun shine through with it.
Oh, that's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. Yeah, well, thank you so much, Ben. Well,
yeah, it's been brilliant. I've absolutely loved every second of it, man.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Creating a Universe. A big thanks to Ben for joining me. It was a real pleasure. Be sure to follow both Ben Sebastian and the Sonic Symphonic Podcast to connect with the great work that he's doing. New episodes of the Sonic Symphonic Podcast come out at the beginning of every month, and the next one will debut Ben's brand new single, The Skin That I'm In. Links will be in the show notes. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and until next time, take care.